You're listening to The Murder in My Family, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including Missing Persons,
DNA ID,
Scene of the Crime,
Zodiac Speaking,
Beyond Bizarre True Crime,
Citizen Detective, and
Campus Killings.
all of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its host, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss the murder in your family on this podcast, please be sure to visit themurderinmyfamily.com for more information. This episode may contain unsettling material or subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Independent podcasts like this one depend on word of mouth to bring in new listeners. So if you find that you enjoy this show, please take a moment to rate and review it wherever you listen to your podcasts. And be sure to introduce a friend to the show and invite them to listen. With your help, The Murder in My Family can continue to grow and reach a new audience. To learn more about the show or the cases we discuss, please visit themurderinmyfamily.com. You can also find us on Twitter with the handle @murderinmyfam or on Facebook at facebook.com/TMIMF podcast. If you'd like to support The Murder in My Family and get VIP access to things like ad-free listening, early preview episodes, and bonus content of not only this show, but every other podcast on the AbJack network of indie podcasts, consider subscribing to the show with an AbJack Insider subscription through Apple Podcasts for only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year. You'll unlock a variety of listener benefits and you'll be supporting the show in the process. Your support is greatly appreciated, and thank you to all of our supporters that generously donate to help keep the show growing and improving. One last note, please support any of the sponsors that you hear on The Murder in My Family the way that those sponsors support this show. It's with our sponsor support that the show can go on and continue to provide a platform to share these stories with you in every episode. Thank you. And now, on to our show. Welcome to another episode of The Murder in My Family. Today, I am joined by a previous guest who had spoken with Mike about the murder in her family. And today, she's back to give us an update on the things that have happened since the last time she was on and to ask for your help. So please be sure to stick around to the end so you can find out exactly how you can help this family. And if you could just introduce yourself or reintroduce yourself actually to the listeners, just give us your first and last name and a little bit of context as to who you are.
Hi, I am Jeannie Dotz Bronkolski. I am the only child of Les and Carol Dotz, who were murdered in their home February 3rd, 1995 by David Scarborough, Thomas Gagne Jr., and David Watts. And my husband and I have been fighting for justice for them for almost 30 years. The longer that we are dealing with the nightmare that is the criminal justice system for victims of violent crime and their loved ones, the more we find out that we don't know nearly as much as we think we do, and we definitely know we don't have enough rights.
That is 100% true, and I can vouch for you in confirming that as somebody who's in the same space as you are. Thank you for being back on the show. So excited to have you here. We definitely have, I think, a kindred spirit in the sense that we're both just trying our best to get justice for our loved ones that were tragically taken from us. I want to take a minute and just kind of level set as to where we are. And I don't want the listener to think that we're going to go through the whole story again, because we're not going to do that. We're going to try to push that up, or at least, at the very least, put it in the show notes below so that you can click on it and listen to the whole story if you want to hear it. And I also don't want to put Jeannie through that today. But we are going to go through an update. We're going to talk about what's been going on since the last time that Jeannie was here. We're going to go into some of the history of what happened with this specific suspect that we're going to be talking about today. And we're going to get into a bunch of other things. And at the end, like I said, we're going to talk about how you can help. So, Jeannie, I just want to know, since the last time you were here, What's been going on with your parents' case, with the suspects in that case, and with their, I think that's a good place to start. And what's happening with you and your advocacy efforts since the last time you were here?
Of course, the reason we're here is David Leon Scarborough is coming up for parole for the third time this coming December. November of 2023, the one murderer, who in my opinion was the most foul and evil of the three, died of illness in prison. The third one, who was a juvenile at the time and who made a plea bargain, and since he's been out, he has been continuing a criminal path. And he did get put back in jail last year, maybe a little bit, maybe in 2022, for violating his parole. But they let him have an early parole again. I contacted the parole board, the jail, everything. I don't think they even paid attention to me. I'm still glad I did it. I will continue to fight for my parents. I will always sign petitions or write letters for any other murder victim survivor, loved ones, because it's the right thing to do. I would hope to say people would do the same for me.
Absolutely. It's the right thing to do. And it doesn't take that much effort or time. Every signature means something. And every ear that hears the story is important. I applaud you in the work that you're doing.
Well, thank you. At the last parole hearing, David Scarborough lied through his teeth, as usual, changed his story multiple times. And then he made a comment that I just thought was one of the dumbest things somebody who was up for parole could ever say. He said, "Oh, we get high in prison because we're bored."
Good grief.
I nearly fell out of my chair. I thought to myself, okay, you've got tons of people you can talk to. You have a library. You have a fitness room. You have foosball machines. They have access to all types of educational and vocational programs. The only thing he's done is he did get his GED, and there was like this one little fiddly program that he completed. But he's claimed that he's done all these things. And there's no record of it at the prison. None. It's just knowing that the lies keep coming and coming. And he sent a letter to me last time that absolutely, I was alternating between wanting to scream and throw up. And I say sent, not wrote, because I've seen a letter he wrote before. And also based on how he speaks and so forth, people tend to write like they speak very closely to it. Somebody else wrote this for him. For one thing, he doesn't have the spelling and grammar skills. And he kept going, I was a child. I made a mistake. Number one, he was 17 days from being 19. He was legally an adult. He could get a driver's license. He could buy liquor. He could buy cigarettes. He could join the army. He could buy a car. He could buy a home. He could get married, which he did. That's another horrible story. He used this poor girl and his family horribly. But he was a child, according to him and his family, and that it was a mistake. Now, how is it a mistake when you're driving around a neighborhood, getting high, going and ringing doorbells, trying to see if somebody's not there so you can break in and steal? Which is what happened in my parents' house because they were out to dinner. Even though they had a very large, very noisy collie in the house, it would bark her head off. And somehow she survived that horrible night. So having to sit there and listen to them lie, and you're not allowed to do anything about it.
I'm not going to excuse the behavior, but I think there could be some argument to the fact that robbing people and stealing could be a bad decision that somebody made. And it's not good. It's not a good thing to do. But they didn't have to go in and kill anybody.
Oh, no, they didn't have to carry a gun in the house.
That's right.
If they thought it was empty.
If it was such a harmless, young, immature mistake, why'd you kill them?
And then why did you start using and selling drugs and stealing cars when you were like 13, 14 in middle school?
Let's get into that.
Right.
Let's talk about why you're concerned about this person being released potentially and that kind of buildup of history that you have to understand his nature and who he is as a person. He obviously does not learn his lesson, continues to reoffend, it sounds, but I want you to go ahead and just illustrate that for the listener so they understand the urgency behind this. You don't want other people victimized the way that your parents and you and your family has been victimized by this person.
Yeah, one of my worst nightmares is they stole a little hand pistol out of my mom's nightstand that she kept there when my dad had to travel overnight out of town, and they stole that. And I still am terrified that one of these days we're going to find out that gun was used to kill somebody else. But in 1994, Scarborough got caught with drugs, with a gun, trying to steal a car. He and his family somehow convinced the Knox County District Attorney at the time, he'd never done anything like that before. He'd never do it again. He was a church-going person. The whole family was in church, which is true. The entire family, including other criminals in the family, are in church every time the doors open. And which, of course, ended up being a whole lie, because he even testified in court. He started using and selling drugs and stealing and so forth when he was 13, 14 years old. So they dropped the charges. Why they couldn't have done probation, ankle monitor, I don't know. And here a few months later, he's out with the same people that, he got into a shootout with one of the other murderers over a gun. He's not the one that told his parents. The other guy was Gagne. And they were like, oh, it's okay. We forgive you. Didn't call the police or anything.
Oh, my God.
Of course, that might have something to do with the fact that they have an expunged conviction for possession, and they have relatives who are drug dealers. And since he's been in prison, he has racked up infraction after infraction. He's been caught with drug paraphernalia. He's been in possession of illegal cell phones, tobacco products in the areas he's not supposed to have them, constantly flunking drug tests, violating state law, which I don't know exactly what it was supposed to be, stealing, failing to report as scheduled, another positive drug screen, refusing direct orders. What was he doing out when he was out? Using and selling drugs and stealing. What has he been doing since he's been in prison? Using and selling drugs and stealing. The only thing he hasn't done is kill anybody else yet. So if somebody who had no regards for the law before he went to jail and is continually proven he still has no regard for the law, what makes us think that he's going to give a rat's behind about the law, our community, or us? Because to people like him, and to him, we are nothing but a means to an end. We are an inconvenience at worst. And we're just collateral damage at best. I don't want to see any other family have to go through what we have, anything similar, because of him.
Absolutely unbelievable that just people can't see the history. And how does that work? And I remember you said something, I think it was in Mike's episode, about there's more rights. Even whenever laws are changed, they'll go back and make it retroactive more for those suspects and those who have been convicted of the crime than for those that are out there trying to get answers, trying to have people held accountable for their behavior. It's beyond frustrating for me going through it. Do you find yourself with the same level of frustration and anger and just feeling like, why is it like this?
It's like this because so many of our elected officials are former criminal defense attorneys that still have financial ties to law firms that have practiced criminal defense law. That, in my personal, not so humble opinion. In Scarborough's case, he was convicted, 2 counts of felony murder, count of burglary, and a count of robbery, all to be served consecutively. He got life with parole. He was supposed to serve a minimum of 50 years. Okay. Roll calendar ahead a couple of years, and the Tennessee State Supreme Court decides to change case law and make it retroactive. Over 1,000 murder convictions were overturned. Scarborough's was one of them. We kept waiting to go back to trial, and we weren't really worried so much that he would get off because they did not overturn the burglary and the robbery.
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, man, it's so frustrating. And
Yeah.
it feels like the truth, justice is being trivialized. So
Yes.
I understand the sarcasm there. I totally get it. The sarcasm is there because it's like, it's either that or I'm going to scream my head off. And like,
Or both.
yeah, I get it.
So then we kept waiting for the trial. The judge had some health issues and things were going back and forth. Finally, we get a call from our prosecutor, one of our prosecutors, saying, hey, his attorneys have approached me. He wants to do a plea bargain. And they said, what do you think about it? And I said, my husband and I thought about it. And we thought about it long and hard. The fact that we really did not want to have to go through the emotional trauma of another trial, of course, was high on the list. And we did not want to be in the same room with him and his horrible family, considering especially his mother was the one that as I'm walking by one time during one of the hearings or trials, she yells out nice and loud, if they didn't want their house broken into, they shouldn't have gone out to dinner.
Wow.
So, yeah. And also one of the reasons we considered the plea bargain is I was really scared of losing my job if we had to go back for a trial. So we accepted it, and we were told that he would not be up for parole till at least 2026 or 2030. What year is this? 2024. Which number parole hearing are we on? Number 3. Turns out that something we were aware of, that during the time frame he committed the crimes and was the sentencing in the plea bargain, state of Tennessee, prisoners get 2 days off for every 1 day they serve. And they can earn goodie points. Now, if they violate the rules, break the law, like his long litany of violations, none of those goodie points are taken away. So it's changing because the law over the past few years, people who commit murder, rape, child molestation, horrible acts, horrid crimes, they have to spend a lot longer in prison now than people who committed crimes back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s. But most criminals at this point in time, including violent offenders and murderers, spend 30% or less of their sentence in jail.
Wow.
Yeah. And to say that it's infuriating does not begin to cover it.
No. It's a slap in the face every day. I've stopped calling it a justice system. I call it a legal system because it's really what it is. There's nothing really just about it, at least not from my family's perspective, and I imagine not from your family's perspective either. Mm-hmm. There is no justice and there is no closure. Closure would be your parents being there for Christmas and Thanksgiving. Closure would be my brother having my nieces and nephews and me having a relationship with my family. We'll never get closure.
Well, how can you get closure when every time you turn around, there's another hearing, there's another appeal, that, something gets overturned. You start from scratch. And then finally all that levels out, for lack of a better term, and you've got the freaking parole process. And then you get harassed by the killer's family and friends because you don't want him to get out of jail or prison, and they condemn you for standing up for the people you love.
Let's talk about this for a little bit. It's something that people who consume true crime may not be aware of because they have the luxury of turning on the episode and then turning it off when it's over. You and I don't have that luxury. We don't get to turn it off. It's always there. It's always on. And people may not be aware that sometimes you get bombarded with hatred for being on this side of things. I know that you've experienced that firsthand directly from the family of the suspects. I've experienced it from the public on the internet. I just want my listeners to know what it's really like to be in our shoes. Can you share some of the things that you've experienced and some of the things that have been said to you and about you as you've just tried to do your best to make sure that your parents receive the justice that they deserve?
Oh, gosh. Well, first of all, Scarborough's mother stood up in their church and said that I knew he was innocent, but I just wanted somebody to pay, that I forced the sheriff to arrest him. Point in fact, I never heard of him until after he was arrested. And of course, the horrible comment about my parents shouldn't have gone out to dinner. I couldn't figure out why I was mad, because I, quote unquote, wasn't hurt. His cousins and some of his aunts say I need to quit picking on him. Oh, I've been told I'm lying just to try to make my case sound better. I've been told I don't have a heart. Got more of a heart than that piece of trash sitting in prison right now. That's for sure. Oh my God, and the letter he sent to me, the line that really made me wig out, I'm just trying to be the kind of person you and your parents could be proud of. That was so cruel and hateful. And of course, it's a bald-faced lie. As here you are, you're trying to do the right thing. You're standing up for the people you love. You're speaking out for the people you love. You are fighting for the people you love. You are playing by the rules. You are not a criminal. You are a decent person. You have chosen to be a decent person. He chose not to be a decent person. And yet, I'm the one being harassed. I'm the one being called names. I'm the one being threatened. There are so many things wrong with this scenario. And I've even offered to send them clippings of the paper and so forth of the trial and the investigation to prove I'm not lying. They, of course, do not respond.
Because it's about making you feel bad for trying to ask for accountability for his actions.
I have to admit, his parents, the only ones that ever came to the trial and the hearings, they didn't want anybody in their family or their church to know the truth.
If that's not a sign.
Oh, yeah. The truth is going to come out no matter what. I'm sitting here as we're talking, surrounded by file folders of copies of articles from the investigation, from the trial, from the plea bargain. I've got some copies of some things that I have written, kind of Clark type things. I even have a letter. There used to be a victims and support group here in Knoxville, of course, East Tennessee Victims' Rights Task Force. And Honey Bear became our unofficial mascot. And whenever we used to go somewhere for Crime Victims' Rights Week or Domestic Violence Week, I'd tie her these huge purple ribbon. She loved people, especially kids. She adored kids. And I would read this thing I wrote that was supposed to be Honey Bear's perspective from that night. I cannot tell you the number of places that for Crime Victims' Rights Week. We used to luncheon. We used to have a candlelight vigil. The sheriff's office. A lot of this all came crashing down when the recession hit, because social service and law enforcement and so forth their sponsors were gone because a lot of them went out of business. I even read this at the detention center at a ceremony in the Liberty Garden. And I found it. It's not in my computer, but I'm going to retype it into it because my old computer died. And I've been heartbroken. I couldn't find it. And I found it the other day. Okay. And I was so happy. But as the thing is, every time you think you've taken a step forward, something beyond your control yanks you back. There are these groups who want to abolish parole, and they want to abolish prisons because they think everyone can be rehabilitated. How do you rehabilitate murder? Murder is forever. There are no do-overs. And also, most violent criminals don't think they've really done anything wrong.
Right.
They think they deserve to be in prison. How do you rehabilitate that?
Or how do you rehabilitate somebody who will lie to tell you what they think you want to hear in order to get what they want from you?
Yes, which is exactly what all prisoners do when it comes up for parole hearing time. And that was one of the things during the last parole hearing. He goes, I've been going to church for 10 years now. Guess what? During that 10 years, he flunked drug tests.
Right.
He grew up in church. He was going to church when he was stealing, using and selling drugs. And, oh, yeah, murdering my parents.
Did you uncover anything that you didn't know, or did you remember something as you were looking through all of this archival information that you forgot about? Is there anything that maybe you didn't talk about the last time you were here with Mike that you want to share today?
Yes, definitely. There was a witness for the prosecution. And I can't remember. I don't know why I stuffed this in the back of my mind. But he and several other people used to work at a little U-Haul. And David worked there. Scarborough worked there. And they were out hanging out back during smoke break. War story. And guess who was bragging about killing my parents? David Leon Scarborough. Now, this kid testified at Scarborough's trial. And there was another guy there who was ready to testify, but they decided they didn't need him. So there was 2 witnesses to hearing what he said. And it turns out it was the U-Haul that is near where I live. And we've been, of course, boycotting it ever since. If anybody ever asks me about, do you think U-Haul down there any good? I say no. If that's the kind of people they hire, no. So it would kill me. Bragging about murdering my parents. But remember, he keeps saying he was a child. It was a mistake. It was an accident. If it was a mistake or an accident, why do you find the need to brag about it? Because you're a psychopath.
Unbelievable. Anything else that you learned?
Yeah, he supposedly has a kid. She's not a young girl anymore, she's very gullible. And it's a long, complicated story. I won't go into it, but her mother and family became some of our biggest champions during the hearings and the trials because they hated David. They never liked him. They said he kept saying all the right things, but there was just something that grated. And they weren't paying attention to the news at the time because their oldest daughter had a baby and she was born. And of course, the family was all torn up about that. But anyway, the whole time, even before Charity and David got married, his family kept pushing. You need to get pregnant. You need to get pregnant. You need to go in front of the judge. So he sees a pretty young wife with a baby or a pretty pregnant young wife. And the thing that's ironic is she knew she couldn't get pregnant unless she had a minor surgery. But she didn't tell her husband and her in-laws that. I think somehow deep down inside she was there was the spark of, they're using me. They took her to a doctor, to a gynecologist, and she says, I don't want to get pregnant. I don't want to have a baby right now. And then she told her and the gynecologist said, yeah, I confirmed that diagnosis, and what happens here is between you and me. And they kept hounding her. Well, all of a sudden here, right before the last parole, an ex-girlfriend of him claims that her, at the time, 28, 30-year-old daughter is his. I don't believe it. There's nothing said about a DNA test or whatever. And oh yeah, she's been in trouble with the law too, the ex-girlfriend. And she claimed for a long time that the dad was actually, I can't remember if it's his cousin or his father. Oh yeah, he's an ex-con.
It's obviously, there's a million reasons to not want David out on parole. I think you've dug deep. You've found you've had to be subjected to some of the most vile comments that you would not expect to be hurled at somebody whose parents were brutally murdered. It's not right. It's not okay what's been happening. And I stand behind you. I understand your desire for what's right to happen, right? Like he took the lives of your parents. That's not replaceable. That's not something that can be fixed.
And his relatives keep telling me I have to forgive him.
What do you think about that?
Nothing I'm going to say.
I'm sure you have a place you'd like them to go.
Yeah. The thing is, if he was truly remorseful, if he has turned a leaf over, if he's truly repentant, he would not continue to lie. He would not continue to rack up infractions. He wouldn't be him. Let's put it that way. And yes, God can forgive anything, but it doesn't mean he has to.
Is there anything else that you want to add before we go into what you need from my listeners?
I've started a petition on change.org, Justice for the Dots, December 2024. And I'm very disappointed at the very low number of signatures. A lot of people are looking at it and reading it, but they're not signing. And I participate in a lot of murder victim survivors groups, and I'm always signing or writing letters and so forth. So I'm confused, I'm discouraged, and I'm also hurt that people, especially like in yours and my position, are not scrambling to sign the petition. Wouldn't you want someone to be signing yours if you were in my position?
Exactly. And like I said, it really takes very little time. It takes less than 5 minutes of your day to do it, but it makes such a huge impact because it lets the people that are in charge of this situation know that people are paying attention. People are watching.
Mhm.
People are aware of what is going on. And that little added pressure goes a long way. And it helps to build momentum behind the movement for justice.
See, in Tennessee, we have a big problem. His name is Governor Bill Lee. He loves his criminals. He thinks every single one can be rehabilitated and redeemed. He's a serious supporter of this thing called Men for Valor. It'll say only has a 15% recidivism rate. Yet when he was talking to the mayor of where I live a few years back, he told him they only have an 18% success rate, which means there is an 82% failure rate.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been appointing people to the board of parole that think like him. He won't take meetings or phone calls from victims of violent crimes or their loved one, or with grassroots organizations like Hope for Victims, which I belong to.
I hope that things change sooner than later for that section of Tennessee and for your hometown and where you live. I really sincerely hope that all of my listeners will rush over. The link is going to be in the show notes below. Sign the petition, share it. It's a small commitment, but like I said, it's going to make a huge impact because we do need to let the judges and everyone involved in this case know that everybody's watching, everybody's paying attention, and we are not going to stand by them without saying anything. My heart goes out to you, Jeannie, and I'm so inspired by the work that you're doing to keep your parents' memories alive and to focus on keeping the persons responsible for what happened to them accountable. It's not something that I would wish on anybody to go through, but it does inspire me to know that you're out there fighting.
Thank you. I have also created a Facebook page called Less, and then there's a dash mark, Carol, and the space dots, DOTS. If somebody would like to private message me through there, or if they just want more information, because I have pasted articles and so forth about the murders and the trial. For example, some of the titles are Man Roll with 1995 slaying of Farragut couple, Man found guilty in murders, Farragut couple didn't fight but were shot repeatedly. There's a lot of information there. Yes. Go to Facebook, LES-CAROL space dots, DOTS.
We'll go ahead and put a link in the show notes as well below. So as you're listening to this, you can just click on it, go directly to the Facebook page and give it a follow. Start engaging with the content. Help bring more awareness to this case to help the family of the Dots. Thank you so much, Jeannie, for joining me today. Thank you for sharing. Thanks for reaching out. Justice for the Dots.
Eric, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to speak with me today. It means more than I can adequately give words to. So many of those of us who had I won't say lost, because we lose our loved ones, they were from our lives.
Mm-hmm.
We feel so confused and alone. And one of the biggest things I learned early on is that you didn't know what questions to ask. You had no idea where to go to ask the questions to begin with.
Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your heart, for your love for your parents. I know that they're proud of you.
Thank you once again for joining me for this episode of The Murder in My Family. We'll be back here soon with an all-new episode of The Murder in My Family, and I hope that you'll join me for it. But before you go, remember that every murder victim means something to somebody.